you know, we still need the stories, whether we read modern novels or not. It's like, we need that connection, whether it's with our elders or with our kids. We pass these stories on as something precious. For me personally, it's probably just the unknown. I've always been drawn more to the unknown and whatever the beyond of normal life. So I would actually go out and look for these. We would go to haunted houses. We would go to haunted areas of the cities, see what was going on. Yeah. Now, whatever that comes from, I don't know, but it kept life interesting.
It was almost like an escape.
Definitely an escape. Family life was not a happy life, so that was an escape. Oh, definitely.
Hey, welcome to the Floaties for Krakens podcast. I am your host, Camille Maria Costa, and it is a brilliant day to be monstrous. Hi, you Cuttlefish. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 12 of Floaties for Krakens. How's everybody doing? Well, we're in February now, which is kind of crazy. I love February, though. It's a month filled with important events, like Black History Month, of course. It's a really fun time where you get to give cards to your friends and tell them how much you appreciate them. And it is Stuffed Animal City, which is always incredible. Listen, I know 2025 so far has been strange, but at the very least, I hope you're enjoying February so far. And that you get to eat so much delicious candy this month, because you should. You deserve it. We have a super special guest with us today, Cuttles. This individual has not only been a dedicated fan of the show since our very first episode, but is a brilliant folklorist who is literally one of the kindest people on the planet. And no one can discuss gaming lore just like he can. It is my pleasure to introduce to you all Hunter Bowles. In his own words, "Hi, my name is Hunter Bowles, and I am a historian and folklorist. I am currently the collections manager at the Simpson County Historical Society. I always enjoy foodways study, as well as military history and material culture. I really got into the world of the spooky through historical study and the depictions of monsters in Old Norse sagas, Greek tales, and other such stories." Hunter, thank you so much for speaking with us on the show today. Your passion and dedication for the preservation of culture is incredibly inspirational, and I'm so lucky to call you my friend. I'm truly excited to see where your folklore journey leads you to. And I hope you get to work in mythical weaponry special collections one day. Wouldn't that be so cool? With Mjolnir and Soul Edge and the whole gamut. Don't worry, I'm sure it'll happen. Just a quick content warning for this episode. In the following interview, there will be mentions and discussions of body horror, graphic body augmentation, mental abuse, physical abuse, descriptions of war and battlefields, PTSD, human death, and the taking of one's own life in this episode. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe. Alrighty, Cuttlefish. Without further ado, let me introduce to you Heart to Hearts for Spartans. Hi, Hunter.
Hi.
Again.
Hi again.
Oh my God, how are you?
Good, really good.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, for people that don't know, I haven't seen physically I haven't seen Hunter.
Last
AFS
AFS?
maybe?
Yeah.
AFS
The,
2 or 3 years.
Tulsa,
2?
I guess. Yeah. I think that was it. It was Tulsa.
God.
That was the last AFS I went to.
So last AFS. And that's okay. So backstory, Hunter, I met Hunter in our graduate work at WKU Folk Studies. And We had a lot of classes together, I
We
think.
did.
We had
Sat
a
like
lot
the
of
same 2 seats.
yeah, our seats were always next to each other. And I remember Hunter always being interested. Well, you were always interested in in monsters and things, but like specifically, I remember Nordic folklore, I remember like Greek mythology, I remember like that kind of exploration of gods and we would always talk about stuff like that
Yeah.
casually, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
in our classes and stuff like that. Um so I always remember Hunter being super passionate about that kind of stuff and weaponry too, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was a material culture, nut. I was a
Yeah.
military historian before I went to folklore, so, yeah, I had a lot of
Really?
that. Mhm.
Please explain. Please explain. Tell us about yourself, Hunter.
Sure, yeah. So, hi, I'm Hunter. But yeah, before I went into folklore, I was a historian and an anthropologist
Yeah.
at Western. So
Yeah.
got my 2 bachelor degrees in both of those fields, history and anthropology. So I always kind of found I wanted to do more of the minutia of both than I
Yeah.
did like the big overarching pictures because I like to look at like evolutions of military technology. So like why this
Mm.
country used, or why this nation used this certain type of spear for a certain time and then stopped and then jumped to something else and kind of
Yeah.
why that happened. So, and then also how these different weapons also personified what a culture was. Like, because
Mm.
as dark as it always is, people have always found new and inventive ways to kill each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why every nation didn't just use the exact same thing. So
Mm.
that was kind of interesting for me to see, all of that. Why this group used curved spear or curved swords versus straight swords, and all these different
Yeah.
things. That's kind of how I started.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I never thought about it. I mean, I've always, I feel like I mean, us being into folklore in general, and we'll get into what that
Yeah.
is for people that may not know like that study kind of, but
Right. Yeah.
it's so fascinating to see what like one object how much that can tell you about an entire generation, about an entire culture, about just it's reflective of society and what society was like at the time. And I just think it's so brilliant that you explore it, or interested in it through weaponry, because you're right, and it is dark, right? Like it is pretty brutal, and you learn a lot about pretty difficult stuff historically. But it's fascinating when you think about it, like survival and like how they were being like how were these being used to bring a generation forward, right, and keep them surviving and keep them going is fascinating.
It is. It's there. There's just always, and it's funny how even as a historian, I think I was already kind of picking up on like some folkloric tendencies.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like I would study like that's kind of interesting that they were talking about like magic in like these different swords or whatever it was. Like you mentioned
yeah,
the Norse one, I thought about they would used to put bone in the like when they were making swords, they would take a bone from something,
yeah.
either bear or even some of their ancestors, and put it with the metal whenever it was being worked. They thought that it would imbue it with strength, which it did because it also added carbon to the steel. So it actually made
Oh,
them better weapons. So it was this like this magic was there,
yeah.
but it was also there's a scientific reason for why these weapons were actually getting better and stronger and more flexible and less brittle. So and that was like one part that I'd found was like that's cool that they had magic, but it did actually like have a scientific backing with it too. I was like, this is
Right.
kind of
That's fantastic. That's so cool. I had no idea.
yeah, it's neat. It's a cool little like it's a little niche part that they mention a few times, and then a lot of like blacksmiths are like, well, yeah, that adds carbon. That's gonna make better weapons. Like
Right,
neat.
naturally.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, I have a hard question for you.
Oh
Cause I
gosh.
remember we would get into it. We would talk a lot about Mjolnir and like we would talk about oh my god, God of War. Cause God of War came out recently, I think, when we were going to school.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but in general, do you have like a favorite weapon in just like mythical realms, in sci-fi realms, just in realms not of ours, quote unquote. Do you
Okay,
have
so
a
not
favorite
not of
weapon?
ours.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that hard?
hmm. It is because there is always like, so Mjolnir is always cool.
Oh yeah.
I mean that's just the idea of the hammer and like the story that goes with it. Um, gosh, because there's a lot of interesting like one-offs or like things that are only kind of mentioned every now and then. I will probably stick with well no yeah. So Mjolnir and Gungnir are probably
Yeah.
two of the tops just because of how interesting their whole just the line is and then who owned them and kind of the implications that they have with
Right, right.
one is going to one stays with the Allfather, one is going to start Ragnarok, and it's just like the all these different things that that is kind of widespread, and then also like we don't have a lot of written stuff. We have the sagas from the Norse like era,
Yeah.
but like that's kind of it. They didn't they
Yeah.
there a lot of their history is kind of gone. So like
Right.
it having these bits and pieces, I do like to hear about those. But gosh, there's
Yeah.
a lot of cool mythological weapons like
Yeah.
Cuchulainn, his in
Ooh.
Gaelic. He has, and I'm terrible at pronouncing Gaelic,
Oh,
because
me too.
it's a lot. But like he has a spear with him that is named. Any of the the naming of weapons was something that was so interesting. I actually did a paper on weapons made out of meteorite, and like a lot of them were actually named because they were just so unique, and that was kind of this culture that you would
Yeah.
name these important pieces. It
Yeah.
was, but I think probably I'll stick with the Norse, like Mjolnir and Gungnir for now. I will. My problem is I change my my mind so quickly, or it's just different areas.
I feel like that's spoken by a true nerd in a good way, right? Like in a yeah,
Yeah,
whatever my favorite weapon is, whatever I'm fixated on that week. You know what I mean? Whatever
yeah.
I'm reading about.
I bounce pretty quickly. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back too, I think, when we explore
Okay.
Norse mythology in general. I think that could be really fun.
It could
Or
be.
or even like maybe even expanding on the idea of these weapons as monsters themselves could be really fun.
Yeah, some of them
Um,
with living and like the Vorpal blades and
yes.
like things that actually talk to. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, there's just too many like sentient weapons too that like you're like, oh, that's kind of weird
That's
implications.
creepy.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that could be so fun.
it could be cool.
Okay. Okay, put that on your
We'll do a
calendar.
pin.
We'll
We'll
have
put a
to
pin on that. Okay, yeah.
we're gonna have to come circle back to that. Okay, so we've kind of thrown around the term folklore a lot, but you consider yourself folklorist, I hope, right, Hunter?
I do.
So
Yeah.
what is that? What does it mean to be a folklorist?
Oh, great. That's a fun question. I feel like I'm on my comps again.
No, you're not. God
No.
bless. No, you're not. No, 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 no.
Funnily, I always really resonated with Dan Benamos with
Mm,
his definition of
yeah,
folk studies because of how succinct it is.
yeah,
Because I think that so it's artistic communication in small groups is
yeah,
his definition,
yeah,
and I like having a succinct definition for folk studies because it helps me explain it to everybody else. Because if
yeah.
we have this, my big thing whenever I was in school and still now is even if I have this big erudite definition of folk studies, that doesn't matter if I can't talk to my neighbor about it or my dad. Like
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so like artistic communication in small groups is how a group either displays what being in that group is, how
Mhm.
they talk within the group, how they identify, like how they make
Yeah,
sure that people know um, who they are based on profession, where they're from, all these different things. So
yeah.
that's probably my favorite. I mean, there's so many definitions of folklore because we've been trying to define it since forever.
God.
But
Yeah,
yeah, that I always liked that one just for the succinct nature of it, how short it is. That
yeah.
is always appealed to me.
And I love that you mentioned too, like this idea of almost like accessibility, right? Like, because I think sometimes, and I don't mean to get like political about it, but like sometimes, and we've seen it throughout history, that there is kind of this like hoity-toity nature of like, I'm an academic folklorist, right?
Yeah.
And other people are not allowed into this world, right? And when in reality, like the baseline of folklore, right, is like everyday people, and like you mentioned, communication and just identification and existence, right? And I love that you said, right, like if I can't explain what I'm doing to my neighbor or like my dad, right, then what is it all for? Because that's
Yeah.
their folklore, that, right, like that's what it is. And so like you said, there's always been such a big battle of definitions and identification and what is this,
Yeah.
and so I think you said it perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. On mine, I think I can still talk about the comps test. Now that I have my mind on that, funnily enough,
Yeah.
ours, one of our questions was to talk about, like, the 8 words of folklore that we had like pounded into us.
Oh
It was
boy.
to pick one, take it out, and add something else in, basically like replace a word. I um for as
Oh,
much
Hunter.
like pain as it causes, I put in authenticity, like authentic, and I don't know if that probably got me any points or not, but the whole reason is because everyone else that we interview, they always say this is the authentic way to do something. This is authentic. Like,
Right.
okay, well, if they're going to use the word, why are
Why
we
can't
we're so uptight about the word authentic? It's like it's fine. Just
it is
yeah, it's
fine.
okay. And so I did that. It's like it's just because we have to be able to relate to people. So if you,
Right.
you can't be like, no, you can't say authentic. Like, okay, well, that's gonna piss some people off. Like, yes, I can.
Probably.
Yeah. So that was
Wow.
my yeah. I took a stand there. My comps,
Good for
my
you,
comps test.
Hunter. For people that may not know, comps are like comprehensive exams. It's often, it depends, right, on the field that you're exploring. But it's often taken in grad schools, or well, more often in PhD programs. You'll take a
Right. Yeah.
comprehensive exam, and it's basically, right, testing your knowledge on what you've learned and seeing if you're fit to graduate with a degree. And in our graduate program, master's program, um, we had to do a comprehensive exam in our second year, as well as either a thesis or or another project. We were very busy in those years, and comps. That speaking of monsters, I feel like comps are like the legendary monster always talked about. When you were in school, like, oh, this is coming, this is gonna happen, and it's really
Oh yeah.
hard and really scary. Um, and I would agree.
Yeah. I had so much nervous energy. Like going into that room, I just remember I was like shaking. I was like, "This is just 2 years worth of my
Hard.
life. That if I mess this up, I'm just kind of
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. And I'm totally not ashamed to say it. Like, it's totally fine. I barely passed. Like, barely passed. Like, with a prayer, right? Like, that is probably, and we took it, because I know you're at your tail end, right, of your year, Hunter, was when the pandemic started,
yeah.
right? And so we took it during the pandemic, online,
We did
like
too.
on a computer, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so when I tell you, I opened my laptop and everything disappeared. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know
it
why
was
I'm
a blur.
here. Blur. I've never been a good test taker. Never. Like, I will never remember anything. And so kudos to everybody who takes that test, who passes that test,
Mm,
who
yes,
it's hard as hell. It's
yes.
really hard. Yeah. So anyway, that, in case people were curious, that's what scarred Hunter and myself into becoming folklorists and wanting to
Trauma
do it for the
bonded.
rest of our lives. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Well, what are you up to now, Hunter? What are you doing?
Yeah, I work in the collections at the Simpson County Historical Society, so it's in my hometown, so
Oh
in
my
Franklin.
god.
So I am organizing a collection that has been going since the late 50s.
Holy
Um,
crap.
so I think, and not to disparage them, they've obviously done a lot of good work. I think I'm one of the
Sure.
first like uh museum field trained individuals to do this. A lot of it is volunteer based,
Wow.
and they have learned a lot. I mean, they're doing well. They use like the past perfect system and everything before I got
Gotcha.
there,
Yeah.
so they're able to do organization as best as they had. So I
Yeah.
am now picking up where everyone left off, uh,
Yeah.
and I think I'm me and one other gentleman that work there are kind of the two that are mainly in the collection. We are just trying to
Yeah.
organize and find space. We're in a historic building in Franklin, so it's not like we can expand to a new room anywhere.
Of course
Um,
not.
yeah, but it's great. It's cool. I find weird and really cool bits of history just kind of hidden in like boxes and everything. It's like this is awesome.
Yeah.
I need to put this in a
Yeah.
better box.
Yeah. This should
Yeah,
be somewhere else, but this
yeah,
is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's freaking cool. Okay, so for people that may not know what archiving is, do you mind
Yes.
giving us a little definition of what it is that you do?
Sure. So hmm. So all that I am doing, I am the collections manager. So
Yeah.
luckily, archiving is with. I do a little bit of archiving. We actually have a librarian that's there that does
Perfect.
more of that too.
Yeah.
Um, but we are trying to make our content and everything that we have accessible to the community. So we
Yeah.
actually have a genealogical research center there. So people do a lot of family trees and family history. Um, so we have digitized a lot of our collection and trying to get them where we have scans available for people, um, or even more so, a lot of times they like to see, the actual paper, which is
Yeah.
fine, and we love
Yeah.
to have that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I had someone in there maybe like a week ago that got to hold a paper from the 1800s that was from their like great 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 grandfather, something like that. And then
Whoa.
she was like reading it. She's like, "This is all the stories that I ever heard. I just never got to see it written down." And it was like
Yeah.
correspondence from them from like North Carolina. Someone had moved there, and they had wrote letters back, and so it
Yeah.
was like letters back and forth. Like this is great, and this is why I really love the museum field is people can do that or find pieces that
Yeah.
they remember or have like something that's like my grandmother used that specific piece right there, something like that to do whatever. So
Sure.
it's important, and it's fun to see people have that kind of connection or to make a connection, which is even better. We get a
Yeah.
lot of field trips in, so a lot of
Oh.
kids. Yeah, so we get like our local schools and then some homeschool groups come in,
Yeah.
and the kids always like we have a fire truck, one of the first fire trucks in Franklin out of the like 20s or 30s. And so like
What?
kids know what the modern fire trucks look like, but this one's way smaller, but still there's pieces they can recognize. Still bright red, still has ladders and hoses, and
Oh my
they love it.
god.
The kids love the fire truck. It's like it's the showpiece. It's
I'm
huge, and
sure.
yeah, it's cool.
God, that's so fun. That
Yeah,
sounds like
it's a
a
good time.
really, really lovely job.
It's
It
good.
really
It's
does.
very beneficial. It's very rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet it is. It's so cool to see like people, like you said, like connect with pieces of themselves they didn't even know existed.
Mm,
And family and cultures, and it's just something, it really is like I highly recommend anybody go to your local archives or libraries or collections or museums, and ask if you could have like a special tour of
mm,
archives and collections, because holding something from decades ago, from centuries ago, from generations ago is wild. Like it is such a cool feeling
yeah.
to be able to physically touch history in that way.
Nerve-wracking too, depending on. I
Yeah.
held
Yes.
when I was doing research actually at Western, I was for my undergraduate degree, I was doing work on the Revolution,
Oh
and
yeah.
and I was like, I need first person sources, whatever else, and the lady like came out and dropped the books, like, all right, that's from the 1780s. I'm like, ah, I was like holding
Goodness
it like so,
gracious.
yeah, I was like trying so careful to open it up. It's like
Tenderly.
yeah, I was so nervous the entire time.
Oh my god, I bet. And there's so much that goes into it too, I'm
Yeah.
sure, with preservation and what gloves you have to wear and how they have to be stored and temperatures.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's
There's a
so
lot.
fascinating.
It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this will probably be the hardest question I'm going to ask you today.
Great.
Maybe. We'll see. But Hunter, in your words, what do you think is a monster?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Um. So I had a couple. I had two that I thought of.
Okay.
My
Okay.
knee-jerk reaction always is the thing that goes bump in the night. It's the
Yeah.
something out there. It's the you don't really know.
Yeah.
The more thought through answer that I found or that I have is the unknown, the other, and the dangerous. And
Mm,
it's these kind of pieces because it's typically there is an inherent danger to a monster, whether
yeah.
it is the monster itself or the surroundings that the monster is in, or even like the idea that a monster inhabits. So like
Mm,
I always kind of had because like they I think about like Sasquatch, something like that.
yeah.
It's out in the middle of nowhere, but it is like this giant ape that does have an air of danger to it. Or
Mm,
you have like La Llorona. Now you did a
yeah.
lot of your study with La Llorona, and it talks about there is this aspect of what she can do, but it's also the area that she inhabits. Like, don't be near these waterways in the evenings and things like that.
Yeah.
So, like, there's danger in both aspects, the monster itself, and also where she's at. And then also the idea of, how she got to be how she is, like this warning for women and also for husbands, just kind of depending on what you
Yeah.
take out of it.
Yeah.
Like, so there's danger to it, is the at least the idea that I have. Those kind of three.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I think that's so cool. I love your inclusion of the word danger because
Yeah.
it instills some sort of fear, some sort of worry or anxiety, like something bad could come of this. And I love that you said too, sometimes not even necessarily from the monster, right? It could be the
Right.
situation, like you mentioned, the area, the river, the dark woods, right, or something. Like there is something eerie and scary about it,
Yeah.
which is so cool because you're right. And I think that also leads me to think about like cryptids, for example, in general, how a lot of the time they don't even quote in a lot of the stories, right, they don't quote unquote hurt anybody, they just warn you that
Yeah.
something bad is going to happen, right? Like if you see
Right.
this cryptid, bad luck or something bad will happen. And that's such an unsettling thing, I think,
Yeah.
but I love that. I love that you said danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. And otherizing, like you said, the other, the unknown. Why do you think, Hunter, we as people are so afraid of the unknown or something we may not understand?
Hmm. It is a way, I think, that has kept us safe
Mm,
for a long time. I
yeah.
mean, even going far, 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 far back, if there's something that you don't understand, it's probably just best to leave it alone than to investigate it, or at least it's safe that way.
Yeah.
You again, like things that go bump in the night, I'm not gonna run out into the woods in the middle of Appalachia trying to figure out what the sound is. Like
No.
that's just not the vibe. That's something that
No, it's
you
not.
hear that you're like, cool, something out there is doing its thing. I'm over here doing my thing.
That's
I'm
correct.
gonna let that yeah, I'm gonna let it do its thing. I'm gonna stay here.
I'm gonna stay
It's a
alive right here.
I think it's a safety mechanism that's kind
Yeah.
of been ingrained in us for forever. Is to try
Yeah.
and mind your own business and you stay safe that way.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There is that it's like a moral, it's like those legends that have the moral of the story, right? Like don't be stupid, don't do this.
Yeah.
And you'll be fine. And and you're right. I mean, I think it was survival instinct, right? There's a reason still to this day, that being in your room and you turn off the lights and you can't see what's on the other side of your room, that why that sends chills up your spine, why you are on edge, why you
Yeah.
are scared. It's ingrained. It's like part of us at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was your first kind of exploration or introduction into monsters, or the spooky world in general, Hunter?
So I learned this about myself while trying to think about this. Um, so I was raised Baptist,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think some of my first divings into monsters were the monsters in the Bible. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I would be the
Yes.
kid. I'm sure that my Sunday school teachers and the preacher at times, I didn't care. I'd run up to the preacher and ask questions. They would hate to see me coming because I would have like the tiny bit, like the tiny questions. I would ask about like the behemoth or the leviathan that's mentioned in the Bible. I'm like, hey,
Yes.
what is that? We don't really have like two or three lines of description of what that is.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's modern day interpretations of what they think it could be, and they kind of like match it to some stuff, like, but we don't really know.
Right.
Or, how dinosaurs, if there were dinosaurs on the ark, I always asked that. They
I
hated
love
that.
you were that kid. I
I
love
was,
being
I
a
was that
dinosaur
kid.
kid. Yes,
I
Hunter.
was a
Yes,
dinosaur kid. I was a
me
dinosaur
too.
kid for sure. So I was like, how do the dinosaurs fit? And then, oh, do you remember? Yeah, how'd they fit? I was like, come on, guys, they're huge.
That's
So
so
I was like,
funny.
whatever. And then, you watch Prince of Egypt?
No, but I
Okay,
know, kind of,
so
like the
the part where
storyline.
they part the Red Sea,
Okay.
they're walking through the Red Sea. In that, you see a giant like shadow like go across the walls of the water there,
Yeah.
and people looking, it kind of looks like a whale, but people looking
Oh.
at it now, they're looking, well, the tail is flipped, so it's not a whale, but it's a shark kind of tail.
Oh.
So they're like, is that whale shark? Is that a megalodon? That's whatever that is. So I would also ask if if the walls of water looked like an aquarium whenever they were walking through the Red Sea.
That's amazing.
They hated that question too. Yeah.
But you are asking the questions that need to be asked.
These were
These
the
are,
hard pressed questions for me at 9.
yeah, absolutely. That was what you were learning at church that day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I had that, and then the other kind of supernatural, spooky kind of thing that I had learned. Um, so in the South,
Yeah.
magic isn't really a thing. They don't want it. It's very Bible Belt kind of idea. It's not
Yeah.
accepted
Yeah.
until it is, because
Yeah.
the type of magic that is accepted is often um, shown as just knowledge of nature, and
Mm.
it is the older type of what a lot of people could interpret as magic. So my pop, which is my mom's dad, would
Yeah.
tell me stories about his grandmother, that she was the one that could she kept bees,
Oh,
and she never wore any gear, she never used any smoke, she could just go, and she would
what?
go and mess with the bees, get honey, whatever, and never was stung. She would sing. She would sing with the bees, get all this, and come back. And
What?
doing research on that, that's a very popular Southern and Appalachian tradition, predominantly for women, that you could do that, but they are just more nature inclined, but there is this inherent magic to it.
Yeah.
There's also a tradition of talking to bees. You would tell the bees, and you would have to tell them important events that happened in your life, or your bees will leave. So, like marriages, deaths, births, you'd have to tell your bees. And
Oh
so
my God.
that was a tradition that she did and she kept up. She was also a water witch.
Yes.
So she
Yes.
was a dowser, or however you
Yes.
want to call it, and she was use hazel, because it just depends on what, there are specific trees that work for different folks, and
Right.
she would use hazel. But and then, so all of this to say, natural magic is
Mm.
another way into the spooky. I get these stories that I would hear that, like I said, probably wouldn't be accepted or are accepted because they're not, the showy magic. They are the quiet magic,
Mm.
knowing when to plant based on moon phases, all of
Mm.
these things. It's accepted in the South because it's a lot of times just seen as like information, or it's she was just born that way, like she knows how to mess with
Yeah.
bees. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. That was one that I had thought of. Um, so she'd gone through a lot of that.
Yeah. That is fascinating. I have never heard of that tradition before, but it makes sense because I've talked to a lot of people that know women, specifically around Appalachia, that raise bees, have bee farms, and don't have any gear. I've heard that many times, and it
Yeah,
shocks me every time.
yeah.
Like, what? That's brilliant. That is so fascinating. Do you know if it, and I know you said it is predominantly women, but do you know if like any of those traditions or, that idea of being so close to nature can pass down like to you, if even?
um, Possibly. I have gotten to mess around with water witching just because it was interesting. Um,
Yes.
Peach worked with me. Peach tree. Like so, you get a Y shaped limb or a
Yeah.
twig, and you hold it and you just walk around and you'll actually feel it move in your hands and it'll point down. And whenever it points down, that's where water is, and that's where you knew where to dig a well.
Right, exactly.
I felt it move, and I don't know, I- you know, I'm not sure about that inclination or if it was just something else. Who
Sure.
knows?
Yeah.
Uh, but I did get to work with beekeepers throughout for my grad program, which was super fun. And the guy that was there, he was one of the master beekeepers in Kentucky. So there's a handful.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and I got to work with him, and he's like, I don't wear the full suit. He's like, I just wear a face mask, and he does just the hat. And he's like, and I don't really use a lot of smoke. And I was like, okay, why? And he's like,
Yeah.
well, he's like, I don't have to. I was like, okay, what does
Oh,
that
all
mean?
right.
Yeah, I was like, what does that mean? He's like, well, I know what my bees like. They were his bee. He always was very, he's like, I know what my bees like. I know what they don't. I don't wear certain colors, and they're okay. And so he would just go and do his thing. And he's like, I keep just my helmet on, or my his shield on, because if bees ever do get upset, the first thing they're going to do is go for your face. And it's like, this is just base. He's like, this is just base protection. He's like,
Right,
anyone that
right.
doesn't use this is he used some interesting terms, but
I'm sure he did. I am
um,
sure he did.
old farmers. I am trying my best. I'll keep it even here for you. Uh, but he was neat, and he kind of had that idea too. He would talk with his bees while he was doing stuff.
Oh
Like
my
I had pictures
gosh.
of him like pulling out slides and everything. He's like, "Yeah, here's my queen. This is what she's doing. Hey guys, move!" And he would like part the little bees so you could see the queen. And he was just a chill guy. He was funny. He was really good at what he did and enjoyed it.
My gosh. That's brilliant. I mean, it is magical. It is, right?
Yeah,
Like to
watching that,
see that.
I was scared of bees for so long as a kid.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
to where I love them now. I love seeing bees. But
Really?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I do, and it's funny because like being so scared of them and then seeing this guy's like, no, look, you just like sled, and it was like literally like parting the like sea of bees just to show me
Red
the
Sea.
queen. Yeah, I was like, exactly, yeah, we're full circle already.
Here we go. Yeah.
But it was
Yeah,
neat. It
yeah.
was cool.
That's so beautiful. Save the bees. I love bees
Oh yeah.
too. Bees are
Oh my
so
god.
beautiful. They're lovely. That's amazing. Okay, so I love that I think like the world of the supernatural in a nature lens, right? In an earthly lens, is so beautiful. It's so fun. Um, Arguably too, horror in the natural world is pretty scary, right? Like it's haunting. It's
Mhm.
ancient spirits, right? It's ancient things that we can't even comprehend. And I think that's what's so fun about horror and monsters and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we got a lot to dig into with your monster today, Hunter.
I'm sorry.
And no, this is gonna be fantastic. And we're gonna try to do our best. We were talking about it before recording. We're gonna try our best to encapsulate as much as we can, and educate as much as we can about this world. So bless your heart, Hunter, for this role. But Hunter, can you please tell us a little bit about the Halo universe? What is it? What does it entail? What is the story? Tell us everything.
Yeah. Okay, so this world spans a long time,
Yeah,
especially with some of the books that have come out. So I'm only gonna focus on the era that my monster exists, because there's some like
perfect.
precursor, forerunner stuff that
Yeah.
messes in the. I'm just gonna ignore that for now,
Okay.
because it gets convoluted a little bit.
Oh, I bet it
So
does.
the story is um, basically a fight for survival for humanity. Um,
Mm,
humanity runs into a group called the Covenant.
okay.
There's a lot of biblical allegory in this, and so if you want
Yeah.
to talk about a good display of religious trauma, I can come back and talk about the Covenant. So just let me know.
Writing that down.
Yes, write it down. So the Covenant is a group of aliens. There's a few different species of aliens in the Covenant
Okay.
that are on a religious crusade, trying to find objects from the Forerunners, which is what they see as their gods, basically.
Gotcha.
All of these things have been left behind. They are trying to collect them and just have them and get
Yeah.
power associated with it. So they run into humanity. Um, humanity was favored by the Forerunners way back when. The Covenant, some of the higher ups that know that, don't want them to be brought into the Covenant because they would usurp some power. So they
Yeah.
just decide to exterminate all of humanity. Um, that
Of
was
course.
that was the call pretty quickly. Um, so all that a lot of the games go through is a fight for survival. Humanity is fighting the Covenant. They are losing. Um,
Ooh.
it's a bad fight. The Covenant are just more technologically advanced. There's more of them. All of these
Yeah.
different things. Um, so we follow predominantly in a lot of the games. There's a few offshoots. We follow John,
Hmm.
who is a Spartan, which is my monster. I'll go into those.
Yes.
Um, but John is a Spartan who is trying to push back against the Covenant,
Hmm.
and he does so. But I mean, humanity is continuously losing.
Yeah.
Um, they actually the line always goes is that humanity doesn't win; they just survive. They outlast the Covenant,
Huh.
because the Covenant has this internal fracture that happens because of some racial tensions inside, um,
Mm.
that the Covenant splits, and one of the races joins humanity, and they help fight against the Covenant.
Whoa.
So that, and again, a lot of religious trauma with that.
Oh,
It
sure.
is so if you think about, I'm just going to go like a lot of the words that go through. We have the
Yeah. Yeah.
Covenant.
Yeah.
They find the Halo rings, which is their big piece they're trying to find.
Right.
Which their idea is if they activate a Halo ring, they will take them to the next step in their great journey. What
Yeah. Okay.
humanity finds out in the Halo rings is they are designed to purge the galaxy. They If they activate, everything alive dies, and
Holy
they were
moly.
and they were designed to stop an entity called the Flood.
Okay.
So the Flood was another monster that I kind of forward showed you as like one of my tops. It's a
Yeah.
pig.
Yeah.
Um, so that is what the Halo rings do, the Flood, and then there is an arc that is meant to restart everything after the purge. So that's the main three games. The next three games follow John fighting the Banished. So there's a
Ooh.
whole other group
Okay.
that we're fighting on another end.
Yeah.
Uh, so we learn about them. They are a part that seceded from the Covenant, and we're
Yeah.
actually fighting the Covenant on the other end that we don't learn about until later. So that's the active fight now. That's actually where the story has left off.
Interesting.
Is a fight with the Banished.
Okay.
Uh, so the last Halo Infinite was the last game that came
Okay.
out, and it ended with a fight on another Halo ring against the Banished. So it's and there's a lot in between. There's a lot of minor
Sure.
bits here and there, but that's at least a lot high points, and not all of them either.
That's you did wonderfully. That's really that covers the bases,
Okay,
right? And I'm of course I have a million and one questions,
sure.
because I for two I want to know like when you started playing the game, and how it was introduced to you, because I remember, gosh, it must have been like 2005 or something, and I remember all my older cousins, just playing the hell out of Halo. And I always knew they were playing because of that beautiful
Oh
ha,
yeah,
right? Like coming out of like every single nook and cranny of the house and just screaming and guns blazing and like all of these things, right? And if I'm not mistaken, it was on Xbox, I
yes.
think.
Originally, and then they've had some that have been put out now that you can play on PC. But
Oh,
originally
sick.
it was all Xbox. My
Yeah.
first one was around 2005
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
ish, so that's and probably around then because Halo 2 was
Okay.
2004, I think,
Okay.
and
Okay.
Halo
Yeah.
3. So my first one that I owned was Halo 3. I played Halo
Gotcha.
2 at a lot of my buddies' houses, sleepovers, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I played a lot of that. 2001, I think, was whenever Halo 1 came out. I was too young to do that. Mom and dad weren't going to buy, me at 5 an
Yeah.
Xbox.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
understandable. But I have since gone back and played all of them
Of
just to
course.
yeah, just to say that I had and get the information and story. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I've been playing since 2, and I've played every game since then except like a couple. They had like a couple like one-off like small games.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
like Spartan Assault was one, and there
Ooh.
that was like the others. But I've played almost everyone that's an FPS. I've
Yeah.
played, and then
Yeah.
there's two that are real-time strategy games that are immaculate too. That I've played those, so they were good.
That's awesome. And you've said too, right, that I mean, the universe has expanded into books, it's expanded into movies and TV series, right? Like it's
Yes,
pretty big.
it is. Yeah, it's the books have a lot of really fun information, and they help to just expand the universe because it's not always following John. You'll follow a different
Yeah.
Spartan team, or you'll follow a group of non-Spartans, or you'll get some viewpoints from the Covenant. You just get like all these different books that go through.
Yeah.
Um, that all they do really is to help flesh out the universe and kind of like
Sure.
because there's a bunch of other Spartans. You're like, what were they doing during the war? It's like, well, here's what they were doing, and there's like a story of their team or whatever it is. Cool.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so the books help out. The new TV show is very split in the community, whether people like it or not.
Of
Um,
course. Yeah.
it moves away from a lot of canon, but then in some parts they talk about like, well, it's just its own standalone show. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
digress.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. I love I really do love universes that are so big that you can keep coming back to them in new ways
Yeah,
and
yeah,
keep exploring them. I think it's also just a selfish thing if you really like that universe, like good, it's never over. I can keep playing the games. I can
yes,
keep watching, right, reading about it and things. Okay, so can you let us know, like for somebody that maybe has never seen the game before or heard about it, okay, can you explain to us like what everybody kind of looks like? And then we'll get into what the Spartan looks like and who the
sure.
Spartan is.
So the ooh, won't move my desk. So the the people in it, I mean, it is set in the far future,
Hmm.
the 26th century, if I'm not
Got it.
mistaken, it's around the 2500s. Um, so everyone looks, I mean, there is still humanity. Humans still look relatively the same. Um, all of their gear is sci-fi esque, but the people that
Yeah.
you play as. Um, Typically are Spartans, except for one game. There's one game where you play as a normal human, which is a
Yeah.
fun spin. Um,
Yeah.
but typically Spartans are, or your character you're playing as are in full power armor, which is a big jumped up suit of armor that has shields. Uh, so you look huge and intimidating. And one of the big
Yeah.
features, especially like multiplayer, you can change what your Spartan looks like. So you can actually make your own to how they look
Ooh.
and how you want to look. Um, and then in the campaign, of course, you're typically playing John. So you have his iconic set, which I mean, if you ever see any kind of like Halo stuff, he's the guy on the front cover. It's the green armor,
Always.
the big orange kind of visor. That's John.
Yeah.
Also called the
Yeah.
Master Chief. That's you'll probably hear
Yes.
that too.
That I've heard a
Um,
lot.
yes, Master Chief, John, 117. It's all of these are how people refer to him.
Yeah.
But that is what John is. That's who you typically play as. Halo ODST is the one where you get to play as a normal human. You're playing as an ODST, which are called orbital drop shock troopers.
Ooh.
They drop from space in like pods. They're like quick shock troops. Uh, you
Very
play as one
cool.
of those that gets separated from his unit, and if you played any of the other games, you realize how screwed normal people are in this universe against the
Oh,
Covenant.
jeez.
Because like
Yeah.
you're not this big guy. Because like Spartans typically range from like 6'5" to 7'5", I think was like the biggest one.
Whew.
Um, and now you're playing as like a normal dude at like 5'11" against like all of these enemies with no shields,
Not at all.
no self healing because the Spartans have like some self healing stuff. So you're like scrounging and hiding and doing all this like so it's a cool look. You get
Yeah.
to kind of
Yeah.
get that look into it. And then Halo Reach is the other mainline game that you don't play as John. You play as a different type of Spartan. There's four types of Spartans,
Okay.
and you get to play as a Spartan 3, which John is a Spartan 2. Um, but that one you also get to look at and play through that and see some differences, and it's a really honestly I think Reach is probably my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but but anyway, yeah, that's the gist what you kind of look like and what you go through.
Ooh. It's super cool. It's super. It's sci-fi, but also it gives me a lot of like Psalmist vibes.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like
You never see his face. That's like a
never.
big thing in the universe. Is you don't see John's face. Like they've teased it every now and then. You do like a legendary ending.
Yeah.
Like if you beat the game on the hardest difficulty on one of the last games, you got to see like just his eyes. One of my favorites.
Jesus.
They worked it all. I think it was two. They
Yeah.
worked all the way up, and you're at the very end scene, and he goes to like take off his helmet. And you're looking at him, and the animators killed it because he takes off his helmet and looks up, and he's wearing another helmet underneath.
That is so messed
So
up.
it's like that's honestly the best way they could have done that. That's so funny.
I would have lost my mind. I
It
would have
was
wanted
so
my
great.
money back.
It was funny.
Yeah. I love that. I love that air of mystery. That keeps
Yes.
it fun and exciting. Okay, so what the heck is a Spartan?
Okay. This is probably the part that'll take a little bit longer.
Take your time.
So there are four types of Spartans, and it's
Yeah.
just based on when they were made. So Spartan ones were the original trial run. They weren't even called Spartan ones when they started. They were the Orion Project.
Uh-huh.
They were just a bunch of adults that they took into a facility and tried to make into super soldiers.
Mm.
They gave chemical augmentations and special gear, um, and they very quickly just decided it wasn't cost effective, and they
Yeah.
didn't really get a lot of change out of it.
Okay.
We only really run into one throughout the series um, that was later on confirmed to be part of that. His
Yeah.
name is Sergeant Johnson, and he's perfect. I love him so much. Uh, but you run into Johnson, um, and he's kind of just a normal guy. He's a little bit better than the other Marines around him, but not by a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so that was Spartan ones. They were dubbed Spartan ones later in the universe, as like, it's our first attempt. We'll call them that.
Got it.
Spartan 2s are the best. They are the best Spartans that were produced,
Okay.
but their program was the worst, the most unethical, monstrous thing that you can do to people
Oh
is the
no.
Spartan 2s.
Oh
So
no.
to start, this is how it starts. 300 kids were identified that they
Mhm.
wanted for the program. I think it's 300, and it shrinks over the years. By the time that it's time for the program to start, they have 75 candidates.
Okay.
Uh, the 75 kids around age 6 were abducted from their homes at night, and flash clones were left in their place. So flash clones are just clones that are designed to die. So the parents don't know their kids were taken. The kids were all taken, replaced by clones,
Oh
and all of the
gosh.
clones, they know that they're going to die. They basically will get sick eventually and die. So by the time that that happens, the kids aren't technically missing. Everyone thinks they've died. So you get 75 6-year-olds. From that point till they're 14, about 8 years, they're put into military training.
Okay.
Uh, against adults. And this is not like kind military training. It's like dropped off in the middle of the woods, like you find your way out. If you don't, you lose. So
Goodness.
they were like gone through this, they did combat training, all of this
Yeah.
stuff until the age of 14. This is kind of where a lot of body horror and gore kind of start.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
that. Um, then the augmentations start. They go through this process of augmentations where they are changed chemically, genetically, and surgically to become basically like the premier, the peak of what humanity can be. So they are stronger, they have faster reaction times, they're smarter, they get like ceramics grafted to their bones so they
Oh
don't
my
break as
god.
easy. All of this process, they result in 33 Spartans being made. And they are then by the age of 14 put into their new power armor suits and sent to combat.
14.
14.
This all
Uh,
happened before they turned 14.
oh yeah, yeah. All of that was about the time they turned 14. And then you think about this, they have all these different learning experiences as kids. They are now, like I said, up to 7'4" to like 6 foot something. They can run at like 40 miles an hour. They can lift tanks. They can do all this stuff. John actually, right after his augmentations, gets in a fist fight with some full-grown adults and kills 3 of them. Just, just fighting, like just trying to defend himself. He didn't do it on purpose.
It
He
just
just
happened.
he just didn't know. He didn't know his own strength. He like punches through one guy and like cracks his neck immediately. He's like, "Oh shit,"
Oh
and he's
god.
so he has
Yeah.
to learn all of this, and like that's the Spartan 2 program. Like I said, they make the peak soldiers, but their program is horrific.
Horrific. Yeah. Oh
So
gosh.
the Spartan 3s are basically called like the knockoffs. They are someone else saw the Spartan 2 program, thought they could do it better and cheaper, so they tried the Spartan 3 program.
Okay.
Is a competitor to Dr. Halsey, who does the Spartan 2s, and
Gotcha.
she's like the Frankenstein in this. She's the actual
Kind of.
monster.
Yeah.
But the Spartan 3s, basically, they take a bunch of orphans that have been orphaned by the Covenant.
Yeah.
Um, so they kind of have an age range. They span 10 or so up to like 15 or 16,
Okay.
and they mainly do chemical augmentations and some surgical.
Mhm.
Um, then they are given worse armor. So the Spartans wear Mjolnir, which is that's the name of their armor, is Mjolnir armor.
Really?
Yeah, they are very Norse coded. So there's Mjolnir armor, Gungnir armor. There's a bunch of different things like that. So
Oh
Mjolnir
my
also,
god.
because they're the only ones that can wear it and use it, because it
Wow.
hurts normal humans. But Spartan 3s aren't given that. They're given a different type of armor that doesn't have any shields, that is less quality. So they are quantity over quality.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they get put through the ringer. I love the Spartan 3s, but they are treated so poorly.
Mm.
Um, like one of their missions, they they lose like an entire company, and they call that mission a success. They lose 300 people, and it's like all of that company is gone, and they're like, they
Jeez.
did their job, cool. So they are
Jeez.
literally sent on like suicide missions to like hold off the advance so that other people, like high priority people, can leave, tech can go, whatever. But they
Jeez.
basically just they get put through so many different meat grinders that it's just unfortunate. Just watching it is bad.
Right, right.
Like, because like they get different augmentations. One of their big ones they talk about is they have dulled pain receptors,
Ugh.
so they don't take us. If they get hit, they don't feel it, so
Yeah.
they can keep fighting through that. And you just get bad, like
Mm.
stories with it. There's one story like a guy comes in with like again, body horror, like
Yes.
his stomach blown away completely. And he is like fighting still. By the time he finishes and like the adrenaline kind of kicks off, he just sits down. He's like, I think they nicked me, and then just
Uh,
dies. And you're like, shit.
oh
Okay.
my
So
goodness.
it's like,
Holy moly.
and most of the time they range anywhere from like late like early 20s to late 20s by the time they're doing a lot
Yeah.
of this. So
Yeah.
and some of them are even younger. It's just but that's the threes. I love the threes.
Oof.
They are sad.
Yeah.
um the fours are the newest generation.
Okay.
They came about in the basically post Covenant War. So
Gotcha.
they're predominantly fighting Banished.
Gotcha.
They're the new kids on the block.
Yeah.
They have less augmentations, though,
Oh.
so they rely more on tech. So their suits are newer. They get different kind of like tech from the Covenant because parts of the Covenant now work with humanity.
Right,
Um,
right.
so they get pieces from that. Um, they are still Spartans. They still do like really impressive things.
Yeah.
Um, their augmentation process also wasn't great. They still have a pretty high death record in their augmentations.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it is a volunteer, all adult organization. So like you can
Interesting.
become a Spartan 4 if you want to, but you have to like volunteer for it.
Yeah.
No more
Yeah. Yeah.
abducting
Yeah.
kids.
You have to consent.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's some consent with it, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. That is good.
Yeah,
That's
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 great. That's
helpful.
great. We love to hear that. But so that is an overarching of like the types of Spartans and kind of what they do.
That is
Oh,
bonkers. Like that is crazy.
yes.
That is such deeply profound stories and just I mean anytime we get into the world of super soldiers, right? Across genres, like across storylines, like, not even talking about Halo, right? It is so complex. It is
Yeah,
so, you know, like it makes you right, like it makes you question so much about humanity, about I don't know, morals and ethics and what is right and wrong.
yeah.
And it sounds to me that they really push the limits on what is too much, with
Right.
each of these guys, right? Each of these groups of Spartans. Oh God, that's crazy, Hunter.
Yeah. They started talking about, I think in 5, Halo 5 or 4, it's one of the two. They start talking about like basically Halsey gets captured by the UNSC, which is the
Okay,
government organization
right.
um, that is all of Earth and all of her colonies. They bring her back like, okay, we're gonna talk about now that they're like post-war. We're gonna talk about what you did to these people because like
Yeah,
you have to basically like you have to own up for these crimes. It's like these are
right.
crimes,
Their crimes,
and
yeah.
they talk about this. They're like, okay, Spartans, a lot of them at their core, do they work because they are broken? Like, are they because they do? You think about that. It's like they don't socialize with people well. They socialize with themselves because like that's the only family they knew.
Mm-hmm.
But like they don't work well. They work with their chain of command because they know how to follow orders because that's what they grew up with. But like they talk about severe PTSD episodes,
Mm,
like if they're sitting like in the evenings, like it's just them like phasing out almost, like just kind of like 1,000 yard stares.
yeah.
And it talks about all of that and like what she did and what she's gonna have to answer to, because like what it started with, which is even more horrifying to me, Spartan 2 started to be created before humanity had met the Covenant. So they were designed to fight insurrectionists. Um, there's a group in the lore that are called insurrectionists or innies. They're kind of shortened to innies.
Yeah.
They're just humans. They don't want to be with the UNSC. They want to do their own colony thing, and the UNSC says no. So these
Holy
Spartans were
crap.
designed to fight other humans, not the Covenant. They get put into a nice light in that government or in the war because they come out just in time for the Covenant to be there. So it's like, oh look, we knew we had these guys ready, like they were going to fight the aliens. Like, no, no, no. If you look in this, they were fighting people that didn't politically agree with you. That's
Holy
what they were
crap.
meant to do. Yeah. So that's even darker.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
way
gosh.
too much. It's overkill because they talk about like one Spartan could drop into like a any base and it would be empty by daylight. Like that was like the idea of it. So typically Spartans are sent out in like teams of 4. So it's like using a cannon to sink like a sailboat. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's so much overkill. But
Oh
there was
my
just
god.
so many these insurrections everywhere. They wanted to use them for that, and then the Covenant came around.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they are. Again, that's kind of why I picked them for their monsters, like for my monster, because
Yeah.
they kind of are. If you're not on the side of the Spartans, they show up, you are screwed.
I mean, just there's no chance, right? Like there's no chance
Very
of
little, early on, especially because there's no information on them. You don't know what they are.
yeah.
Suddenly, this guy shows up that like pries open your doors with his hands and like takes like multiple rounds in the chest and doesn't do anything.
Oh,
Yeah, it's horrifying to think about. Like if they're not on your side, you are not in a good spot.
screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what did what did Halsey, right? That's her name. What did she say when they were approaching her about this and like saying like you have to, you know, serve for what you've done?
She is a narcissist pro science person to her core.
Got it.
She's like, I did the exact right thing for what needed to be to happen at the time.
Oof.
She was like fighting, basically defending her Spartans, which there's a lot of debate in the world if she
Yeah.
actually loved the Spartans, because they were the only family that she was the only family they had, and so a
Mm,
lot of them see her as a mother figure because that's the only person they could really imprint on.
yeah.
It was that, and then one
Yeah.
other commander, but he was military, so they didn't really
It wasn't
vibe
like
with
that.
him as yeah.
Yeah.
She was there throughout like a lot of their things, and she said she feels a lot of grief for what she has to do, but like at the end of the day, she still does it,
Yeah.
and so like it is a very, it's almost like an abusive parent kind of idea, but like it's harder than that because she justifies it. She's like, no, I did what I had to do to elevate humanity to the next level. That is like one of her other lines. She's like I made perfect humans. I did the next step for humanity.
Mm,
And so she's a cool character,
yeah.
and she is a very important character. But
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people that really like her.
Yeah.
she's a she's a badass on in her own accord, like doing all this stuff and like, but it's just it's a hard sell for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She sounds like a very complex character.
Yes, she is. It is hard to like really put a pin on what Halsey is,
Yeah.
because she is technically she did good. She made these Spartans to like defend, and like they really did help humanity, but like at what
At what
cost?
cost?
Like yeah.
Yeah.
So it's hard to like justify and think through that.
Why do you think, Hunter, there is such a kind of fascination with perfectionism, right? With humans, right? Like this idea of being the perfect person, creating the perfect person, right? That feels no pain or can handle pain, is very strong, can defend themselves, can survive. Why do you think that is so often used too, like in storylines with sci-fi and survival and apocalypse, right? Is this idea of the super soldier or perfectionism.
I think it is because people get a glimpse of that in the everyday.
Mm.
Um, they get to see someone do something spectacular, and it is, I won't say rare, but it is not common. It's spectacular because it is a rare occurrence, or it's something that you're like, man, normal people can do that. So
Yeah.
they have that feeling that they kind of want to follow. They're like, well, if everyone can do that, we surely will be better.
Mm.
Like, you always see it's like the talks like the adrenaline, the mom that moves the car, like all these other things that like
Sure,
can
sure.
happen. Well, like if we were only that much stronger, that much faster, whatever, we can help people, or we can be the best that we can. That by the end of that, it kind of justifies whatever we do.
Mm.
I think there's a lot of that in the idea of wanting to be perfect.
Yeah.
I think what's hard is that I think they are spectacular because they are rare.
Mm.
Because like if that,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's hard to like think about because these stories that stick out to me are ones that like it is important to know that a normal person did this. It's not that like you have to be a super soldier,
Mhm.
hopped up on all these drugs and genetically perfect. They're the only ones that can do anything
Mhm.
perfect or do anything worthwhile.
Right.
Well, no, we've seen normal people
Mm.
do extraordinary things for
Yeah.
millennia.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. I mean, you go all the way back. One of my favorite accounts is, and I always wanted to write on the historic, like the heroic last stands, like
Yeah.
these people that do these things because they have to, and because they are the person that will.
Yeah.
Like the Battle of Stamford Bridge. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Tell us about it.
So the Battle of Stamford Bridge is a retreat with the Saxons during the invasion of England.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure I don't get the sides wrong, but I may. But
That's fine.
they were leaving, and they were trying to retreat. And there's a bridge. They were being followed over the bridge, and this army is going to basically be killed.
Yeah.
The opposing army was stopped by a single Saxon with a Dane axe, which is a giant 6 foot, 5 foot tall axe.
Yeah.
He was able to stand and hold off an army while the rest of his people left. And
Oh my
that was
gosh.
the thing. Anyone that came up to him was killed. He was in basically in a berserker kind of mindset,
Right,
and
right,
he was like
right.
taking multiple hits, and it wasn't really doing anything. So he was there and holding this choke point on this bridge long enough for his people to leave, um, and inevitably he dies. I mean, of course
Yeah.
he is. He's there, and there's
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of men. They have to sneak up underneath the bridge and like hit him with a spear underneath to get close enough to actually hit him. So like, it's a normal person. It's a normal
Yeah.
guy that
Yeah.
just decided he's like, all of my friends and family are there. I have to do this. And there's been accounts of that throughout history.
Yeah,
That
of
like
course.
normal people can do extraordinary things as long as there is right motivation, or if they want to. It is
Yeah.
their mindset. So that I think is the idea of um, like why the super soldier idea exists, because that guy, it was a super soldier for
Yeah.
maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yes.
so like it
Yeah.
was this kind of idea, and that persists.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful that you mentioned that. Also this idea that super soldier is a mentality,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like it's a having that courage and fighting for something that you so just like so deeply feel passionate about and want to
Yeah.
save. And I love your idea that like anybody could be that. Anybody that could happen to anybody. Um but at the same time, right, it just it makes because of that reason, it makes the Spartan story so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Right? So just deeply upsetting that they had to go through these brutal situations, more than half of them non-consensually, to reach that level of perfectionism through Halsey's eyes, right? Like through what
Right.
she deemed as this is perfect, right? And I'm curious, does Master Chief what is his vibe? Like what does he, what are his thoughts about being I don't know, about being a super soldier, about being a Spartan? Like is that ever explored or or not?
It does, and through a few different eyes as well. Like,
Yeah.
obviously there are more Spartans, so like you kind of get some
Yeah.
have different ideas. Some
Okay.
try and leave. Like there's a
Really?
few people that like the kids try and break out,
Yeah.
and
Of
those are
course.
heartbreaking. Those
Of
are
course.
like so one does eventually commit suicide. Um,
Oh.
like after all of his augmentations, he breaks out, and he sees himself as a Flash clone
Oh.
and understands now that he doesn't have anywhere in the normal world anymore because his parents think they still have him. He is still there, and he ends up killing himself. Um,
Mm-mm.
and there's a few different instances of that. Um, what was her name? Olivia. So all of them have just single monikers, like it's just their name and
Okay.
some numbers. I
Sure.
want to say it's Olivia, but she does the same thing. She breaks out, runs into herself, like she's in a
Oh.
wheelchair. It's the Flash clone, um, and it there's these points that she has handed herself hands her her own teddy bear, and gives it to her, and she keeps that with her throughout the until she dies. But like so these two obviously they wanted to escape. There were some Spartans that didn't conform too well in training. They were held back for a bit and then later went on to become Spartans.
Yeah.
Um, and then some, like John, adapts pretty well to he's like, okay, this is my life, this is what I have to do. I am a
Yeah.
military man. And a lot of them do the same.
Yeah.
John kind of becomes the leader of the Spartans, pretty much. Um,
Wow.
basically, he's not even the highest ranking Spartan two. There's been a few that outranked him,
Oh, okay.
um,
Yeah.
but even then, they still follow his orders. Like if he's like, "I'm gonna go do this thing," they're like, "Cool, we're with
Great.
you." Yeah,
Yeah.
like or they'll do what they can, and that is a lot of them is a lot of them cling to each other um,
Yeah.
because it's all they got, which is
Of course.
unfortunate because almost every other game you play, John is alone. John has so Halo 1, he's woken up on a ship alone. I think
Yeah.
Halo 2, he crash lands on a ring alone. Halo
Hmm.
3, he crash lands on Earth alone. Like
Oh
he
my
is
God.
constantly separated from his team. In the books, you get to see them work together, and he's like, "Thank God," because like I need a team. Because like
Yeah.
the first time he talks about his working alone, he's like, "I'm used to having three other people to protect me." He's like,
Yeah.
"If I'm focused on one area, I need them looking everywhere else," and he doesn't have that, so he has to adapt. So he's gotten better at it, but his first few times he's like, "Crap, I gotta understand how to do this alone." He doesn't like
Yeah.
to be alone, and so like we get to see him work with this team for one game, and I'm so bummed we only see one because they're all so cool in their own
Yeah.
aspects. Because like
Yeah.
his idea, he is the jack of all trades of the Spartans. He kind of just does everything okay, which is cool.
That's
But his
awesome.
team, like they all have their things. We have a sniper. We have one that's like she's the
Ooh.
fastest of the Spartans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we have Fred, who is like honestly was the leader and like good luck, and like his intuition was the best thing.
Yeah.
John's thing is that he's lucky. That is literally like
Oh,
his
okay.
idea. Um, so he's typically for the first three games paired with an AI. Um, her name's Cortana, and
I've
she
heard of
is
Cortana.
so
Okay.
Cortana
Okay.
is with John. She gets paired with John,
Okay.
and he has a link in the back of his head that she links into. And
Gotcha.
so she's in his thoughts and his eyes, helps him with his armor, info, things like that.
Gotcha.
Um, which she she at one point in Halo 3 talks about is like I got to pick any Spartan I could be paired with, and I picked you because you are
Hmm.
lucky. Like that is like you had something that every no other Spartan had, and it was luck. And she
Yeah.
somehow knew that and went with John. But so that was Cortana. And Cortana is a big linchpin in the series. Like that's what a lot of
Yeah.
Halo 3 is all about is getting her back. She's gone in Halo. Gets lost in Halo 2.
Oh
So you're
wow.
trying to
Okay.
find her in 3.
Yeah.
4, you're trying to save her. It's just all of these things. It goes along with her. Fun part is she's also AI in that universe have to be modeled on somebody. She's modeled on Halsey.
Is she
she uses
really?
she uses a part of Halsey or a scan of Halsey's brain.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So
So of
it's
course
funny.
that makes it even further complex in
Yeah,
terms of how
exactly.
we
Because like
feel.
he likes Cortana and like they have this great relationship, and then he's like, okay, but then like Halsey's like, and it's just this
That's
whole thing.
wild.
Yeah.
This game.
There's a lot. This is why anytime people say games are just games, like you need to break things down because the
Yeah.
stories they tell are cool and in a
Yeah.
lot of times very important. And I
Very.
think they're cool. I love them. I love the Halo games. Like I said, I've played them for forever.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me want to play like right now.
Yeah.
I feel like because growing up, I think too, like there was a lot of stupidity around like, no, you can't play that, you're a girl, right?
Yeah,
Or
of course.
whatever. And so I had always kind of just every time I heard about Halo, I was like, oh, that's probably just not my game, or I'm not, gonna play it. But this sounds very cool. Like
Yeah.
this sounds so fascinating. And like you said, it's a story with such depth, and it's truly a story about humanity. It's truly a story about people, which is always beautiful,
Yes.
and hard and complicated. um, God, okay, so it's complicated, but why do you think, Hunter, that the Spartans in general, right, you can think about just the two, just John, Spartans, all of them, all four, why do you think they've been such like a prevalent force in your life? Why do you think they've stuck with you for this long? Why do you think you always go back to the games? Why do they stand out to you?
There's a there's a few reasons. The I mean, nostalgia is kind of in there. I mean, playing them,
Oh
some like the
yeah.
first games that I really dug into, they have those.
Yeah.
Um, it was one of the first games that I realized, I don't know, I guess at a younger age, um, bad things really can happen no matter if you do your best. Like
Mm,
things are going to go wrong and it's kind of um what you make of them or like make
mm.
something worth it. So Halo Reach is probably one of the first games I remember distinctly crying in.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and
Yeah.
it was impactful. So Reach is you play as the Spartan threes or a Spartan three,
Right, right.
um, named Noble Six. That's the only name you ever get from him. That's his
Yeah.
his call sign. That's all you get.
Yeah.
You get paired with Noble Team, who is all Spartan three. There's 5 Spartan threes and a Spartan two. So
Okay.
he's my favorite character. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah,
his
yeah.
name is George. His name is George, and I
Love
love him.
George. Shout out George.
Shout out George. God bless him. Um, so the whole idea of Reach was the bastion of humanity. Besides Earth, it was their most important planet.
Yeah.
Um, and it gets found by the Covenant, and the Covenant roll in.
Oh,
And so the entire game, you
yeah.
are losing. So you like all of humanity is getting its ass kicked on
Yeah.
Reach. You are your Spartan team, and you are just trying to buy time. That is like
Yeah.
all you're doing. You are destroying assets that are important. You are making openings for other ships to escape. You're doing all of this.
Yeah.
As you do it, and I realized it after the first 1 or 2 times, your team is dying around you. So George is the first one to die, and I
Yeah.
was upset.
Oh,
So his idea is he thinks he is sacrificing himself to save Reach because he basically there's a mission to go to space,
okay.
bring this carrier. They have a giant carrier in space. Like we're gonna destroy it. They're gonna plant a bomb on it, blow it up.
Yeah.
throughout this entire time, you're talking with him. I mean, George is just like the guy that like he protects like a small girl in the middle of a combat, like shields herself with him and like takes all of this and is the emotional. He is the heart of the company
Oh,
of the team.
yeah.
And by the time you get there and he fights on this thing, we capture and clear the cruiser or the carrier. The detonator is damaged and it can't be detonated. It has to be detonated manually. So he gives you his dog tags, picks you up, and pushes you out of the airlock, and you fall from orbit to hit the ground. You see the ship detonate behind you, and all of that. That's the first time you see like that you lose a Spartan that you've ever seen someone lose a Spartan in any of the other games. That's the first time you see that, and that happens, and after that happens, 5 or 6 more carriers show up. So all of that, and it didn't mean anything.
Anything, right?
And so like they talk about that. They're like, he just gave his life thinking he saved the planet. He's like, we all wish we were that lucky. And then
Yeah.
5 more show up. So that happens. Kat, who is supposed to be like the smartest of the team,
Uh-huh.
she gets killed uh, by an accident. She forgets to activate her shields as they're running through and just gets shot through the head. And it's quick, it's instant, it's in the middle of a conversation, you don't expect it.
Oh my God.
So it's that. Carter, who is the leader,
Yeah.
sacrifices himself so that the rest of his team can push past a giant armored vehicle. He slams he's flying a ship at the time. He slams himself into that so that his 2 guys that are still left can make it through.
Oh my God.
Emil, like one of the last ones, sacrifices himself holding off like a line of people
Yeah.
trying to like get the ship and a ship to escape. And then it's just you. And the last mission, and it is a heartbreaking mission for everyone that I've ever talked through it with that's played
Oh.
this game. Your mission, you always have like a mission indicator up top, like what you're trying to do. By the time that the mission kicks on, all it says is survive. So you're there, you are fighting, it's endless waves. I remember fighting for like 30 minutes ish, maybe more.
Yeah.
And like the number hasn't changed. Nothing's gone on. And like my shield break, like you like shield breaks, and then you take your first type of noticeable damage you ever taken in the game. You get hit, and a crack goes across your screen.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
never happened before. Like in any of the
Yeah.
anything, you realize that the damage is sticking. So like you're fighting and fighting and fighting, and then if shield breaks, you take more damage. It goes until finally it goes to a cutscene, and your character dies. So all of Noble Team dies on Reach to try and save it. And that's the point. And I remember, and like I reset that mission. I went back, so like maybe I did it
Yes.
wrong.
Yes.
And like so many people talk about that, they're like upset. They were like angry. They were like all of these emotions. Like no, fuck that. Like
Right.
I'm the main
Yeah.
character here.
Yeah.
Like what's
I
happening?
can't die.
And they
Yeah.
yeah. And the last scene that you see is that post-war, like the last thing they're talking about, and it's Cortana. It's either Cortana. I think it's Cortana talking. It's like you were the first to carry me because the last mission that you did was you get Cortana's box
Okay.
out so that she can then be paired with John.
Gotcha.
So and it's her talking. It's like you were the first to carry me. You did all of this. Your sacrifice was worth it because at the end we won. It's like I wish you didn't have to, but you belong at Reach. And it's your whatever because you can customize your character in the campaign. That's the only
Yeah.
one that you can customize your character in that campaign.
Yeah.
And it's whatever helmet you had on, it's there in the grass after Reach had been fought because it gets the Covenant do this thing called glassing, where
Okay.
they just destroy a planet. They just go around it with giant beams of lasers and just glass it. They basically turn all of it to glass. Um, it's your helmet there, whatever helmet you had on, with a crack
Yeah.
in it, and it's the last thing you see is him take off his helmet and drop it before he dies. But it's there, but it's post the Covenant War because the grass has grown back, the trees are back, there are animals around, so the planet has come back, and so your sacrifice in the end was worth it because the planet's coming back. Your humanity has survived the Covenant, but it's this whole story of just again utter shock and upset.
Yeah.
And I just remember like hearing her talk about like, you belonged at Reach, you did all of this, like, thank you.
Oh,
Like, your sacrifice made all of this happen. And it's just like weeping. It's like crying. You're
yes.
like, I was supposed
Yes.
no. And it's just
Yeah.
being so utterly upset the entire time. And I was like, shit. Just like being so
Right.
like, just like you can't say anything. You're sitting there watching it and it fades to black, the credits, and you're sitting there like, I just spent hours of my life doing this, and I will play that game again because God is
Absolutely.
it
One more. Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And it's so
Oh
good, but
my God.
that's probably one of the biggest reasons that Halo has stuck with me is
Yeah.
because of the potential to tell these stories. And there's
Yeah.
stories that I had heard, the idea of, I mean, I'm from a military family.
Yeah.
So like grandfathers, great grandfathers, my dad, they were all military. And so
Yeah.
these are stories that I had heard, and not to like equate it or inflate it for more than it is, but like hearing these stories and having my dad have like tears in his eyes going through and talking about people he knew.
Yeah.
And then, I understood that, and then being able to feel something even like a marginal amount of what he felt there, like just on a video game,
Yeah.
is important. Because like I said, I can't conflate anything like that to anything close, but that is
Sure.
a
Sure.
minutia of what he felt. And I don't know, I felt like a kind of a connection with that I was like, huh. And I think it was a defining moment for me as a kid to kind of
Yeah.
like understand some more. Um, but yeah, that was one of the big reasons it stuck with me, I think, especially
That's
Reach.
so powerful. And I think I mean it's so impactful, right? For children to see these stories and explore, empathy, to explore lineage, to explore family, what that means, created family, right? And I can only imagine the big piece of your heart, right, that this video game has for you.
Yeah,
I
yeah. I mean,
mean,
alone at like 2 a.m. when that happens. Like playing these games like super late at night, and then that happens. I'm like, I'm alone in a dark room crying, crying. It's like I like this game, but this kind of sucks.
this is rough, guys. Like,
Yeah,
this is God, but I mean, what a beautiful video game. I'm
yeah,
so brilliantly written, it sounds like. And it seems like it also keeps players coming and wanting to play and wanting to learn more and keep going. I love that. I
yeah.
love that you have this game. That's great. Well, this is kind of complicated,
Okay.
but do you think that the Spartan is a monster? Why or why not? Based on your definition.
Based on my own definition, then I'll go with yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Tell us why.
I guess I do kind of have to. I'll stick to my guns and stick with my definition. Then
Yeah.
yeah, they kind of fit all three of the things that I had mentioned. Um,
Yeah.
the unknown. People didn't know what they were when they first came out.
Yeah.
Um, they just kind of and they were hidden. They were not talked about. There was not a lot of information on them, so they were unknown.
Yeah.
Uh, they are certainly dangerous. I mean, they can do horrendous things, and they are well trained to do what they do. So there's that, and they are the other. They are not really accepted into normal society, or
Yeah.
don't integrate well. They have the option to retire. They can,
Oh.
like
Yeah.
later on,
Okay.
post like Covenant War, they are allowed to retire. A lot of them choose
Interesting.
not to because they don't know what to do. It's still that like post military thing that you see some veterans run into, that they don't have that stability anymore. They don't have a cause. They don't have a purpose. So like they talk about that too. They talk about the fact that like yeah, sure, they can retire anytime they want, but what are they going to do as a person that has known the military since they were age 6?
What I mean,
What?
right?
Yeah,
Like,
if they retire, there's been one, I think there's been like 2 or 3 that have retired, and they still end up in like military contracting jobs. Like
yeah,
one, she's like, I am technically a civilian, but I test all the new Mjolnir armor for all the new Spartans. So like,
yeah.
I'm the only one that can do it because Mjolnir can't be worn by
Anybody
non-Spartans.
else?
Yeah, and so like they talk about all of this that like it then kind of runs into a whole veterans kind of idea mentality of like, yeah, now we understand why veterans struggle so much post military. It's like, yeah, that's something
God,
that also needs to be taught. All of these things, like this universe spans so many important topics. And I'm just like,
God,
yeah, it's like they keep going and like keep like opening up new books or writing new books and opening new areas. Like it's cool to think about.
yeah.
And it is important to have those as an accessible way for people to look at them.
And talk about,
Yeah,
like you
and
said,
talk
grief.
about.
Talk about PTSD. Talk about this so complex thing. This very complex thing about war and combat that nobody else will relate to.
Yeah,
Um,
because like
you had
they,
to be in that 33. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
you had to be those specific people, and like I'll go back to my dad again.
Yeah.
He's like, I was in the military and I wrote, he's like, I tried to be a gentleman. I wrote poetry, I smoked a pipe, I did all this well-rounded. He said one of his first ones and one that he is still the most proud of, his opening line for a poem is like, if you weren't there, you'll never understand.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was like, that, I mean, that's like you said, like those 33. I mean, and that's one reason that so many veterans have issues because they have specific instances that some people won't relate to, even if they're infantry to another infantry unit, that
Mm,
they have similar things, but something that if you weren't in that exact spot with
mhm.
like
Mhm.
6 other guys, you'll never know what he went through or he or
Yeah.
she went through. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's just it's powerful and it's important. And like the post military thing with it is it's interesting to talk to because they also, I mentioned the in the communication back and forth, that uncanny valley
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
effect with them, because they also don't look quite right anymore, because
Mm,
they've been in their arm. One of the big things they always talk about is they look pale. They are
mm.
obscenely pale because they've been in their armor for forever, but they're also covered in scars. So they have surgical scars. So it's like down their chest, down each arm to their fingers. It's like everything. Every part there's bone, there's a scar there.
Like Frankenstein's monster, right?
Yeah,
Like
literally,
that's
he
what
is.
they look like.
Yeah, it's exactly. They are covered in scars. They don't know how to like really. They don't move quite right. So like, if two Spartans are in a room, they like can talk with like subtle movements and gestures and things like that that off puts a
Mm,
lot of other people, because
yeah.
like they were trained to do that so that they could talk amongst themselves without alerting Halsey or anyone else. So they
Mm,
have this trauma kind of communication
yeah.
to not be
Which is
heard
so
and
metaphorical, right?
yeah.
Like you can only speak with each other.
Exactly. They, if you, again, you haven't been there, you don't know. And
Yeah.
they like have all of these things that again, post military and veterans, post combat, that come in with any kind of missing arms and visible scars, are also treated different than some that just have more PTSD and more
Sure.
non-visible. And it is just again something that sets them apart, that people, I really, media literacy just needs to be so important to understand that they're not just talking about Spartans here. Like,
No.
yeah, the Spartans are a cool story, but there are real people that suffer from
Yeah.
the exact same thing
Yeah.
and that need to
Yeah.
be heard and listened to and taken care of in some cases, that need to be helped.
Yeah.
And it is good. It is a good piece of media that really has a lot of applications elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's talking about people, everyday people, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I have a bonus question
Okay.
now for you. Do you think Halsey is a monster?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh my God, 100%.
Yes, tell us
She is
why.
she is a. I mean, again, with the kind of allegory to Frankenstein. And
Yeah,
I mean, is it the monster's fault that he is the way that he is, or is it Frankenstein's fault because he did all these horrific things to the monster?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, she is a terrible person. She
yeah,
is like monstrous in the worst cases. She does whatever she thinks is right for herself and what she thinks is correct for humanity, whether that is ethical or not.
yeah,
I mean, hell, she abducts kids, she tortures kids, she puts them through experiments that over half of them die in,
yeah,
and then says that she cares to manipulate the kids further,
yeah,
and it just keeps going, and she is, I think, a textbook definition of a monster, and not just a monster. She's an asshole.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you could be a monster, like as you've seen, you could be a monster and be pretty cool.
yeah.
She's just a monster and an asshole.
It's interesting. It was her choice to do all these things. With the Spartans, 9 times out of 10, it wasn't.
Yeah, they
Uh,
didn't have any say.
yeah, yeah, which is so interesting to put them together that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, Hunter, why do you think that monsters, talking about monsters, exploring monsters, learning about them, why are they so important? Why do you think it's so necessary?
Hmm. It is a continuation of tradition that I think
Yeah,
is important, a good linking point for humanity. Um,
yeah,
you have these monsters, you have what they stand in for in society, that you can talk about monsters a little bit more freely than just dumping out, whatever you want to say in front of whoever.
yeah,
Um, there's a I can't remember Gustav Mahler. I don't know if you've ever heard of Gustav Mahler.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so he has one of
Yeah.
my favorite quotes on tradition ever.
Okay.
So his quote is, "Tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire." And
Whew.
it is
Jeez.
probably like my favorite that I've ever heard about tradition. And as a folklorist, it is important for that too,
Yeah.
because we kind of do both. We see the ashes, we see what's important with them, and kind of what the history of a tradition is.
Yeah.
But the preservate that fire that's being active is how the community still treats that
Yeah.
tradition.
Yeah.
And like with monsters, for example, a lot of times, I mean, you look at what monsters are and kind of how they've been shown in a lot of media. They're just monsters. They're the bad guys. They're like the thing to be scared of. But like folks like you and other folklorists have done a lot of work. Like, okay, yeah, sure, they are monsters, but look at um, was it Daisy? Did Daisy do Daisy did thylacines? I'm sure, right?
Thylacine? Yeah.
A lot of people considered them to be monsters at the time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, no, they are surviving. They are doing what they do as a just a part of nature.
Yeah.
Or Mothman. I like just seeing like all of these, or like what monsters mean to people and how
Yeah.
people identify with monsters. Like how you're like, how can I identify with this super scary thing that's like the other and still be okay? You need to have people
Yeah.
that be like, no, it's fine to identify with monsters.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point that they've been in, like they've filled for a long time, was
Yeah.
these weird spots that like, why is there a riddle telling sphinx here? It's like, okay, well, maybe they want you to understand like how to think and how to do this and
Yeah.
what's important to you. I was like, yeah, like we've done monsters, like had monsters in humanity's stories for forever.
Forever.
Yeah, it's a
And
it's
they
a good
teach you
linking
so
point.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder too. I mean, obviously, um, especially combat PTSD is so it's unique to every person, right?
Mm.
And triggers are so unique, as we just talked about, to every person. And I do wonder if there is somebody out there, right, that suffers with PTSD, that has been through a lot and finds solace in games like Halo or characters like the Spartan. Um,
Mm.
I mean, I know it's hard. I'm sure it's so complicated, but you get to learn about yourself and be like, wow, like somebody else, right, is experiencing that too in
Or
such a
why it's
unique
important.
way.
Yeah, or why it's important to have those people write those roles. Because like
Yeah,
someone that has seen combat knows how to write combat.
yeah,
That is just it's it. Like I know, like was it Saving Private Ryan?
yeah.
Whenever it opened, its D-Day landing scene triggered PTSD in a
Oh
lot of
gosh.
World War II veterans because of how accurate it was.
Yeah,
Because like there's accounts this guy like had to leave the theater and like what's wrong? He's like I'm smelling diesel. He's like that is the. He's like I was
oh,
in a tank or behind a tank, and I can smell the diesel fuel. He's like and it
yeah,
was, and so it's like it's important and it's towing the line of like having that like reaction like okay
yeah,
you gotta understand like people are gonna be reacted to so many different things.
yeah,
My dad always talks about he's like he doesn't have any audio cues, any visual cues. Like I know some veterans have issues with like fireworks,
yeah,
things
yeah.
like that that have that concussive. It's the sound, also that feeling of concussion in the chest. That like
Yes,
he's like he doesn't
yes.
have anything like that. He's like but smell. Dad, he's
Mm,
like we had a bunch of rain recently. Dad was in Vietnam, and
gotcha.
he was like we had whenever they had some rain in the summer, had some rotten vegetation that just had been sitting in some water or whatever. And he's like that night he's like I had dreams like I was there, and it's like it's just a smell, and it's like and it so it's you have to understand what different things trigger for different people,
Yeah,
and that anything can.
yeah,
It's just a matter of
yeah.
understanding that and coping with it and helping people cope with it. Because like not
Exactly.
every like you said, not everyone's gonna react the same way, or not everyone's
Right.
gonna freak out. Some people just kind of space. Some people have dreams later on. It's just
Yeah,
a matter of understanding that.
exactly. And finding stories that help us through those tough times
Yeah.
and help us feel less alone. Yeah. Okay. Well, unfortunately, last question, even
Okay.
though, again, I know we could talk about this for like 8 hours, probably 8 hours. Okay, say Hunter, you're just chilling. Maybe it is a Sunday afternoon and you're home, right? Nice day, having a great day. And for whatever reason, right? Not just any Spartan. I'm going to be specific here.
Okay. Sure.
Um John, literally John,
Okay.
appears
Sure.
in front of you in
Yep.
your
Yep. Yep.
room. Just boom. What would you do in that situation? What would you say? How would you react? What would you do?
Uh, I'd say one. We'd probably just need to. We're just gonna go sit and talk. We're gonna have some bourbon. I'm gonna have some bourbon out. We'll just sit and chat. I think he needs a spa day. He needs
Yeah. Yeah.
anything. I think just sitting, relaxing, doing nothing. I think he'll probably need that.
Yeah,
So that
definitely.
would I think that would probably be it. No, I mean, I think it would just be like talking to any of my other veteran friends, like any other vets,
Mm,
like I have plenty of them, and
yeah.
most of the time they're pretty chill. They just want to hang out and
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
nothing. There's a lot of like, sure, we could do that on a weekend, do nothing, drink and watch TV, whatever
Relax.
he wants to. Yeah, relax. Yeah. Oh yeah,
What
just a good
what
relaxing
if
time.
what if it happens that he's like, I have a mission and I need you to come with me. Like
Well,
there's a reason I'm here with you in this moment.
I don't know. That one's that one's a bit different.
You're like,
I
nope,
mean,
we're just doing bourbon, buddy.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see what it is.
Yeah,
Just
like, can I
he'll
ask
have
some
to give me.
questions?
Yeah, I'll ask some questions first. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go drive down for a bit. It's like, yeah, I'll be a road trip buddy, but I don't know about.
Combat, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know about combat. I don't know.
I love that though. I love that your first instinct though was to be warm and welcoming. Just like chill, man. Like let's just have
Yeah,
a
let's hang out.
yeah, let's just talk. And I'm sure that would be so welcoming, especially from the world that they come from, you know.
Yeah, true. There's not any like existential crises at
No,
at the moment for him to deal with, so we can let him
you have
let
the
him sit
time.
for a day. Yeah, have a weekend
Yeah.
of nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Well, Hunter, thank you so freaking much for
yeah, of
doing
course.
this, being
This
on
is a
the
great
show.
time.
It was a long time coming, and I'm just so happy you're here. And I'm serious, like I'm getting this on record, right? Like
Okay.
please let's have you back because we
Oh,
have
for
I
sure.
think we made like 15 different episodes already just in the span of of our conversation today.
Y- yeah, I can keep going. We can talk about the flood. We can talk about the covenant. We
Ooh,
can.
ooh.
There's so many monsters in the in the world. It's like, oh gosh, I could just be the Halo guy. I guess I can come back and just do that.
That's iconic, honestly. I feel like it
Sure.
could be so much fun. That's so fantastic. And no, just thank you. You're so brilliant and I'm so happy that you're adding to this world and you're part of this world of exploring monstrosity and folklore and seeing how they bridge and I think it's great. I think it's great what you're doing.
Well, good. Yeah, I think you're doing the exact same thing, so it's been great. Like I
Oh,
said,
thank
I've
you.
listened since the first. I'm trying to catch up on all of the stuff on the newest season, so I'm
That's
working on
so
that.
kind.
I just listened to the Silken Sinew. I just listened to
Oh,
like the group chat. That was fun. So
God, that was
yeah,
fun.
that was cool. I've been enjoying a lot. I put it on
Yeah,
at work, just like have like y'all chatting while I'm like doing stuff. It's great.
I appreciate that so much. And, just so you know, too, again, I'm putting this on record. I'm hoping to have a lot more roundtables in the future, So,
Cool. Yeah.
and I always obviously go to the people I've already spoken um, to have you guys talk about more things. So be on the lookout for that
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I'll definitely be asking you for stuff in the
Awesome,
future.
perfect. I mean, hey, I'm even in Bowling Green now, so like
Yes, yes,
back in town.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we can make it work. We can make it
Yeah.
work.
This episode of Floaties for Krakens was written and recorded by me, Camille Maria Acosta. A monstrous thank you to Hunter Bowles for such an emotion-filled interview. A big thank you to Michael Kosman for producing a stellar episode, and a huge thank you to Natalie Hedberg for designing such a phenomenal logo. And music for the show was also written and produced by me, with a special appearance by my tata, Toby Acosta. Thank you all so much for tuning in to today's show. It truly means everything to me. If you have questions or curiosities about the research or media referenced in today's episode, everything will hopefully be in the description box. And you can find us on our website and our socials, links in the description as well. Anyway, thanks again for being here, everyone. And just a reminder, it's okay to be afraid of the monster, but it's also okay to love the heck out of it too. Keep being monstrous and keep shining bright.